The Biden campaign has wished Donald Trump a happy birthday. Email statement just went out listing 78 reasons, Trump turning 78 today, 78 things he did this year, which include a bunch of felony convictions. And it concludes with a quote from one of your colleagues saying, "Happy birthday, Donald. You're a crook, a failure, a fraud, and a threat to our democracy, economy, rights, and future."
Today is Donald Trump's 78th birthday, and the Biden campaign is using this opportunity to go on the offensive and launch some attacks. I want to break that down, and I want to break down this report from some high-level CEOs that Donald Trump came into a meeting, was incredibly incoherent and rambled, and left a bad taste in the mouth of these CEOs. But first, just some highlights from this list of 78 accomplishments Donald Trump has had throughout his life, released by the Biden campaign. There's some hits like Donald fell asleep a lot. Donald went bankrupt, then went bankrupt again and again and again and again. Donald failed as a casino owner. He failed as an airline owner, university owner, hotel owner. He failed at creating a board game and a magazine. He launched his political career on the racist lie that Barack Obama wasn't born in America. He called for the death penalty for the now exonerated Central Park Five, accused of saying the N-word, dreamed of a unified Reich, said very fine people on both sides, called veterans suckers and losers. There's still 50 more reasons. He downplayed service members' concussions. He was accused by 26 women of sexual misconduct, bragged about his building on 9/11. We've all seen that video. He lied over 30,000 times as president. Donald Trump proposed cutting Social Security and Medicaid. He did that again and again. They list that 4 or 5 times. Donald Trump bragged on camera about grabbing women. That one should be higher up on the list. Donald celebrated overturning Roe v. Wade many times. Donald was the first presidential candidate to ask a Secretary of State to find him votes. He posted a $175 million bond. He was sued by U.S. Capitol officers, then sued by more U.S. Capitol officers, then another. Donald had an ally who was sentenced to prison. Then the last one, Donald was the first former U.S. president to be indicted 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. President Biden is not pulling any punches on Donald Trump's birthday, but perhaps even more embarrassing for Donald Trump is this report that came out about him being incoherent in a meeting with CEOs. Watch this clip.
I will say I was surprised. I spoke to a number of CEOs who I would say walked into the meeting being Trump supporter-ish or thinking that they might be leaning that direction, who said that he was remarkably meandering, could not keep a straight thought, was all over the map, and that they, which maybe not surprising, but was interesting to me because these were people who I think might have been actually predisposed to him and actually walked out of the room less predisposed to him, actually predisposed to thinking this is not necessarily, as one person said, this may not be any different or better than a Biden thought if you're thinking that way.
This story is not good for Donald Trump. Forbes reads, CEOs tell CNBC Trump was meandering, could not keep a straight thought. And remember, just yesterday, Donald Trump visited Capitol Hill, and he was meandering in a very similar way. Republicans said that behind closed doors, Donald Trump was talking about Hannibal Lecter, calling him a great man. He spoke of a great romance with Nancy Pelosi in another life. He whined about Taylor Swift not endorsing him, and then he called Milwaukee a horrible city, which I'm sure, as you've heard, has caused a lot of backlash over the past 24 hours, as that is where the RNC is being held. But honestly, it's kind of nice to see Donald Trump's age and his inability to speak being covered by the media for once, because Joe Biden, President Biden, he messes up when he speaks a lot. He's not the smoothest speaker. He has a stutter, and the media will cover that relentlessly. But Donald Trump has had free reign to mess up as much as he possibly can. I mean, he has said some wild stuff over the past 5 years, but the media holds them both to different standards. They treat Donald Trump with kid gloves while holding President Biden to this impossible standard. So it's nice to see the mainstream media outlets finally covering Trump's inability to speak. They say, CEOs who met privately with Donald Trump tell CNBC they walked away unimpressed by the presumptive Republican presidential nominee. I was surprised, said CNBC's Andrew Sorkin. I talked to enough CEOs who walked into the meeting being Trump supporter-ish, only to leave with doubts about the former president. And this is what I've been saying for a while. People begin to have doubts doubts about Donald Trump the moment they see him speaking on stage. That's why you see his supporters leaving halfway through his speeches all of the time. They built up this model of Donald Trump in their head as this energetic businessman who gets it done. Then they listen to him speak for 5 minutes, and that model is immediately shattered when you realize he's an incoherent older dude who is losing his way. Quote, CEO said that he was remarkably meandering, could not keep a straight thought, was all over the map, said Sorkin on Squawk Box Friday morning. They walked out of the room less predisposed to him. Trump reportedly promised cuts to the corporate tax rate in his off-the-record meeting with dozens of the country's most powerful CEOs, including Apple's Tim Cook and JP Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon. Trump also accused President Biden of being unfit for a second term, saying, quote, we need a president who is at the top of his game. And let's face it, the president is not at the top of his game, according to a person who attended the meeting and described it for CNBC. The event in Washington, the quarterly meeting of the Business Roundtable, featured executives asking Trump questions about his plans for a second term. We're going to give you more of the same for the next 4 years, Trump told them, promising to cut income taxes, the federal corporate tax rate, and to ease regulations on business. According to a post by CNBC's Brian Schwartz, executives who heard Trump's pitch say many of his ideas lacked detail, and a person close to one CEO left the meeting saying Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. And also yesterday, Trump proposed the idea of slashing tax rates, but also increasing the amount of tariffs we have. And the price increases caused by those tariffs would far outweigh any small tax cut that Donald Trump would enact if he even got any of this done. CNBC's Brian Schwartz describes the stark contrast between President Biden and President Trump during this meeting with CEOs, saying that President Trump lacked detail. Watch this clip.
First, what'd you learn?
At Trump's side, it was basically a pitch to about 80 CEOs today. And the idea was that, Trump basically said if he's elected, there's going to be a 20% corporate tax rate drop from the 21% federal rate. He's talking about slashing the income tax. He's talking about broad strokes, not many details on this part, which is really key, cutting back on business regulations. He did not go into too many details, and that's important in terms of what he did not say. He did not get into what that meant. And that was really the key from him. And it was a stark contrast to kind of what you just mentioned before with what Jeff Zients, who's the chief of staff to President Biden, said to the crowd there as well.
So back to my point from earlier, all you need to do is place President Biden and Donald Trump side by side and let voters watch them both speak and decide, because overwhelmingly voters will realize that Donald Trump is much more unhinged. He can't stop himself from using this apocalyptic rhetoric about us not having a country, whereas President Biden uses much more hopeful rhetoric. Yeah, he stutters sometimes, but he's not as old as those 5-second clips make him out to be. If you watch his full speeches, President Biden is actually quite a good speaker. He's quite eloquent. He is charismatic. Donald Trump is like a used car salesman. And one more time, just place them both side by side. Voters will realize that. And that's about to happen in about 2 weeks when the first debate comes up at the end of June. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment a blue heart if you made it this far. I read all the comments, even if I can't respond. Hit that subscribe button and have a great day.